Hello, welcome to our Careers in Mental Health panel. My name is Maureen Muldoon. I am a career and internship specialist at SuccessWorks, and I meet with students who are interested in health, environment, and research-related careers. I'm glad all of you could join us today to be part of this virtual panel and to learn more about different options of working in mental health. And I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves. And I want to take a moment to make sure you know about some upcoming programs happening at SuccessWorks that will be available to you. So when you go to our events menu, you will find all different opportunities that are still happening this semester to take part in professional development, like this event today. So let's see here. Our Taste of Success panels include alumni in all different areas, and there is still time to tune into those. We're going to have a separate panel for school psychology coming up in another week or so. Our Job Shadow program, you'll see a few examples of organizations that some of you might be interested in. And then our Career Conversations is a way to start chatting with alumni and learning more about similar career paths that you'll hear about today. For everyone who's attending, you will receive an email with more information about these events. So we're going to go ahead and meet our panelists today. So what we will do is have each of you introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background, your academic background, your current work and expertise area, and then briefly a little bit about your program. And we'll give you each about 3 to 5 minutes to share where you are right now, and then we'll start some questions, and students be thinking about the questions you have as well. They're here to be a resource to all of you. So let's see, Angela, if you would like to go ahead and kick us off.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping you weren't going to call on me first, because I'm going to wait and see what the first person said and follow their lead. So,
however you want to introduce yourself.
No, that's okay. But introduce myself and respond to kind of these questions that you had shared in advance, Maureen, about our programs. Okay, perfect. So hi, everyone. I'm Angela Willits, and I'm with the Sandra Rosenbaum School of Social Work here at UW-Madison. I'm clinical faculty in the school, and my practice background is in mental health. So I have my master's in social work, and then I'm also a licensed clinical social worker, which would allow me to practice, as a mental health provider in the state of Wisconsin independently. And I'll mention a little bit more about that in a moment. My direct practice experience is at working at the VA hospital here in Madison for about 8 years, primarily with post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as assessment and diagnosis and other mental health concerns. And then I started teaching and just kept on teaching more and more until I came on as clinical faculty in the school. So let me tell you a little bit about a master's in social work generally, and then more specifically what a focus in mental health looks like. So a master's in social work allows you to engage in professional social work practice with individuals, families, groups, communities, and/or organizations. So we prepare students to work across systems and across levels. If a student is getting a master's in social work full-time, they would be taking a full-time course load for 2 years or 4 semesters. And typically, and this is mostly true for any social work program, not just ours, that first year is what's referred to as your generalist practice year. And so in your generalist year, you're taking courses and you're in a field placement where you're getting foundational social work knowledge, values, and skills necessary for social work practice at the generalist level. And then in your second year, or what we refer to as the advanced year, that's where you might choose a specialization where you might focus, in this case, on mental health. So here at UW-Madison, in our School of Social Work, our specialization is advanced generalist specialization, and then students choose to focus in the area of mental health. And so what that means, there's also other focal areas, but since we're talking about mental health today, I'll talk about that one. So what that means is that you would take courses in your second year more pertaining to mental health practice, mental health policies and services, as well as macro level practice and advocacy. And in your advanced year, that's when students in their field placement, we call them field placements, but internships, would be most likely in a clinical mental health setting where they're doing direct mental health practice and getting to learn about and practice, client engagement, assessment, treatment planning, intervention, and evaluation skills. And then after obtaining an MSW, for someone who wants to work in the field of mental health practice, the most common thing that we see folks do is get a job in clinical mental health work and start accruing hours towards licensure. So in the state of Wisconsin, it's a licensed clinical social worker. A lot of states have that same title or the acronym LCSW, but every state is different in how it licenses clinical social workers. So depending on where you end up, that could look different. But in Wisconsin, post getting your MSW, you're required to do 3,000 supervised hours of direct clinical practice. So you get a job where you do that and you're supervised, and then you can sit for an exam to get your LCSW. So that's really quickly the sort of course and academic plan towards, I suppose, licensure and working independently as a mental health clinician. Maureen, I can also talk about funding and application process if you want me to now, or should I hold that?
Hold that for a moment, and we'll start out with that after everyone is
perfect
taking their turns. Yes, thank you. All right, let's see. How about Jennifer Betters-Bubon next? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maureen. Jennifer Betters-Bubon. I am an associate professor of counselor education at the University of Wisconsin, Whitewater. Really excited to be with all of you today. Our program trains both master's level school and clinical mental health counselors. So we have two different emphases within our program. Myself, my educational background is such that I actually have experiences in both of those fields. I started off with my master's in school counseling from Boston University and was a school counselor in the Madison area for about 11 years. During that time, I went back to get my PhD, which is in educational psychology, and a minor in counseling psychology. Because in counseling psych, I was able to secure and get supervised hours to get my license in professional counseling. So I have my LPC. And I actually maintain a small private practice on the side of what I do in my day job as a professor. So really straddle both of those worlds. Our program is master's only. So we do prepare you for practical clinical work, whether that work is in a school setting or that work is in a more clinical setting. We are accredited by CACREP, and as such require 60 credits of content coursework, which really is both the coursework that is academic in nature, experiential, where you're practicing the skills, as well as internship. And the way our program works is it is a 3-year program. The first 2 years are more content-based, although in your second year, you will do a practicum, a clinical practicum experience in the counseling services that we have on campus. It's part of our program with their counseling services, where you see clients from the community as well as from student clients. And then your third year is when you will be in an internship, 20 hours a week. And so that's a 9-month internship. And again, that would either be in a school setting or in a clinical setting. So I'm actually teaching internship right after this panel tonight. I have a wonderful group of interns. So we have interns who are at Journey Mental Health. We have interns who are in private practice, in school settings, with individuals who have experienced trauma or domestic abuse. We really have interns in a lot of different settings. And so that is really the culminating year that they have in our program. And similar to social work, our program does help you get licensed, whether that's through the Department of Public Instruction for your school counseling license, or through the Department DSPS for your license in professional counseling. And similar to social work, you will be eligible for your LPC IT when you're done with our program. So it's an in-training license, and you do have to get 3,000 supervised hours before you are fully licensed in the state of Wisconsin. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right. Gina, if you'd like to go next.
So thank you. Hi, everyone. It's nice meeting with all of you. And my name is Gina John, and I'm an assistant professor and also program director for the Clinical Rehabilitation Counseling Master's Program in the Department of Rehabilitation Psychology and Special Education here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So I have some clinical background of working as a rehabilitation counselor. I used to work with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their caregivers at community-based rehab agency in my home country, Korea. And then I came to Madison for my master's program in rehab counseling and received my PhD in rehabilitation counselor education from Michigan State University back in 2017. And I'm also a certified rehabilitation counselor here in the US. So I don't know if I'm allowed to share kind of a little bit about my more research specialty areas, but I've been I've been working on like how to develop psychoeducation programs for transition age youth and young adults with autism and other neurodevelopmental disabilities in order to help them promote their self-efficacy and facilitate a positive career development and transition outcomes as well as their overall wellness. So let me tell you a little bit about our rehabilitation counseling program. Our program ranked #1 in the nation by the US News and World Report. And the program is located within the Department of Rehabilitation Psychology and Special Education. So let me make a little clarify about the name. We have an undergraduate degree in rehabilitation psychology, but we have a master's degree program in clinical rehabilitation counseling and a doctoral degree program in rehabilitation counselor education. So each program has a slightly different name based on the education level. Just kind of giving you a little bit more also background of rehabilitation counseling. It is a systematic process which assists individuals with physical, mental, developmental, cognitive, and psychiatric disabilities to achieve their personal, independent, career and educational, and also other personal living goals in the most integrated setting through the application of the counseling, assessment, career development and job placement, case management, and advocacy process. So our master's program, particularly the clinical rehabilitation counseling program, prepare those rehab counselors to serve adolescents to the adults with disabilities in both private and public rehabilitation agencies. So our program really placed a strong emphasis on field experience, such as other counseling education program, including 3 semesters of a practical training in supervised placement in rehab counseling setting. So our graduates will be eligible for national certificate as a certified rehabilitation counselor through the Commission on Rehabilitation Counselor Certification. Also, graduates will meet the educational requirements for state certification and licensure in a number of states, including the eligibility to apply for the training license to become a professional counselor in the state of Wisconsin. Okay, I will stop here.
That's great. Thank you. And Linnea Burke to round us off before we get started.
Okay. Hi, I'm Linnea Burke, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Psychology here at UW-Madison. And I'm the director of the Psychology Research and Training Clinic, and I'm also co-director of clinical training for the Clinical Psychology PhD program. So way too many words in that introduction. I have a PhD in clinical psychology. I graduated from Auburn University many years ago, and since then have held a variety of practice positions and also research positions, and then ended up as the clinic director 12 years ago. So I've been here for a little while. Our program, here on campus, the PhD program is 5 years on campus plus 1 year internship program. Some clinical psych PhD programs are more of a 4 years on campus, 1 year of clinical internship. It kind of depends on the program. Our program is very research heavy and is aiming primarily to prepare individuals to be professors at universities or to be researchers at a research institute. With that said, though, probably about 50% of our graduates go on to have some sort of practice component to their career. A lot of our graduates go to the VA where they do, direct clinical work, but then also do research. And then probably 50% of our graduates do go on to professor positions at other universities. Let's see, so 5 plus 1. You asked me to say something about the difference between a PhD and a PsyD. So PhD, again, historically was preparing individuals for that professor position at a university, and the PsyD was originally developed as a practice-oriented doctorate. So these would be individuals who would have applied jobs in the community and deliver therapy and supervise other junior therapists and so on and so forth. As they have evolved, however, though, you find PhDs in full-time practice positions, and you find PsyDs who are teaching at universities and doing research. So I think in a lot of ways, the distinction about what you do after you graduate is not quite as strong as maybe it was originally thought to be. There are differences in terms of well, we'll talk about money. You said after a while, that's probably where the biggest difference is.
Linnea, that's a really good segue, I think, because I know that as you know as well, this is a big question that students have about how do I fund my graduate education, and how does that vary by different programs? So if you would like to jump right into that and continue, that would be great.
Okay. Well, so I'd say that, and I'm sure there's always exceptions, but most PhD programs are able to offer their graduate students a certain level of financial support, either through teaching assistantships or research assistantships or fellowships, which is just, they give you money to pay for school. Most programs offer some form of tuition remission, whether it's full remission or partial for the length of time that you're in your graduate program. That's not the case for most, I would say almost all PsyD programs, which tend to be standalone institutions, and they don't provide you with like paid work opportunities, and you do pay tuition. And so the cost of going to the different programs can be quite different. I'd say here at UW-Madison, our students graduate typically without having to take any student loans, where individuals who graduate from a PsyD program might have to take substantial student loans. So that's probably the biggest financial difference.
Okay, great. Let's see, who would like to go next? Speaking to funding options for graduate programs.
I'm happy to go next because we're a master's only program. So we do not have tuition remission. And we just don't, but we do have a lot of graduate assistantships across campus. And in fact, students who are in our program they are desired for these positions. So they offer benefits and a salary. And so that is something that a lot of our students do while they are in our program to supplement. Almost all of our students work on various jobs. Some of our students work at Rogers Mental Health, some work in the schools. So we have a variety of employment options, and that tends to be how our students themselves as they move through our program. And we do have one of the most reasonable tuitions of the UW system campuses. So I can put in the chat kind of the cost per credit so that you all can get a sense of what this might end up costing you.
That would be great. Yeah, any resources that you think of, program websites or whatever, feel free to drop those in the chat.
Maureen, I can go next.
Sure.
Similar to Jennifer, being a master's program, we don't have the same kind of funding that you might expect to see where you would get tuition remission. But at our school, we have over 40 scholarships for incoming and current students. For current students, those can range from $1,000 to $2,000, but we have several admissions scholarships that can include up to full tuition fees and a yearly stipend. I'll plug in the chat in a moment the link to our page on our website that talks about scholarships. And then similarly, we do have, some of our MSW students who secure TA ships either in our program or across campus, or RA ships to get that tuition remission, but it's not something that we promise to students. That's something that they seek out independently and might secure independently.
Okay.
Okay, so our rehabilitation program, particularly for master's students, we have a couple of scholarships available. So one of the main scholarship is called like a federal traineeships, which is provided by the Rehabilitation Service Administration for students in rehabilitation counseling program. So this scholarship offers like a partial tuition payment in addition to a stipend for book supplies and travels for the professional conferences. So students will be kind of notified of the scholarship applications usually in January, but also incoming students will be notified when they apply to the program. So basically the purpose of this RSA scholarship is to support state, federal vocational rehabilitation programs and also promote their employment in the state VR agencies. So the scholarship kind of has a payback requirement. So any of the scholarships who receive this scholarships have to provide like a written confirmation of employment in a state VR agency or other qualifying organizations like within 2 years of completing the degree program. And for any student like who receive like 1 academic year of this RSA scholarship support, 2 years of the full-time employment should be required per the payback agreement. In addition to this RSA scholarship, we also have a couple of graduate assistantship available for master students. There are a variety of research and the grant projects are undergoing with individual faculty member. So the project usually, I think most of the positions are open for more doctoral students, but there are still other positions, some available for master students. So we currently have a couple of master students who are working as either teaching assistant, who is sitting with the main instructor in the undergraduate program, or the project assistant as well. So depending on the grant project that we have, each students will have kind of variety of the opportunities.
Great. Another question to kick us off. In advising appointments, I often get students who are trying to figure out what's the best type of experience to get. What should I be looking for? When should I be getting this experience? Thinking about your students and your program, can you speak to what are you looking for in applicants? What are some of the different types of organizations students intern at, and what is your advice for everyone? Whoever would like to go first.
Well, this is top of mind because we're in an admissions process right now. We just did some interviews last week. So we interview individuals in October for those people who really know what they want to do and are kind of solid, and they're not going to be applying many other places. So we just finished our October interviews. Typically, and I think what's probably common in more programs is the February interview time. And what we tend to look for are individuals who have experience in helping fields and professions, recognizing that you obviously can't be doing counseling because that's why you're going to get your master's, but really thinking about what are some counselor-like positions where I can gain skills interacting with others. So I mentioned previously, some of our students do work at Rogers in either Oconomowoc or Brown Deer, or Madison has a location, because you can get some experience doing counselor-like activities. We have students who work in schools, whether that's as educational assistants or do volunteer work, working at crisis centers. So really it's to us, it's important that you've really given thought about working with people and you've experienced that and you're willing to keep working with people as you move forward.
Excellent. How about for the clinical psychology side?
Well, so probably experiences that would be helpful are things that Jennifer was talking about in terms of getting some experience working with people in kind of more clinically oriented positions, so you get a feel for what that work is like. And then also I would recommend getting some experience in a research lab if you're thinking about getting a doctorate degree, because you know, that's a big part of what you do as a graduate student. You'll have to do your own research. You'll be working on your faculty mentors' research, and you really should get some of that experience to see what it's like, to see if you like it, to get a chance to talk to some graduate students and find out, you know, what their experience is, and just to really try it on and see if that's something you want to do. You know, a doctorate program is going to be a significant portion of your life. You're going to be there anywhere from 5 to 10 years. And, you know, yes, some people don't graduate until 10 years after they started. It's a smaller number, but, you know, you gotta want to do it. So I would definitely try things out and see if you like it.
Angela and Gina, do either of you have any other experiences that you'd like to add?
Sure. So for students applying to our MSW program, our admissions reviewers look at 4 things. There's, of course, GPA and letters of recommendation that you would submit. And then we also ask students to complete a personal essay. And in that essay, they speak to why there are questions that prompt this, and I'll plug that into the chat.
You muted yourself, Angela.
Sorry. I'll plug it into the chat, the page on the personal essay and analytical essay. But in the personal essay, what we're really looking for is students being able to convey a commitment to social justice and an awareness of the field of social work, and that it's not, while, as a mental health clinician, like psychotherapy, mental health practice is near and dear to my heart, but there's a whole other aspect to the field of social work and being a professional social worker relating to our code of ethics and our really call to engage in social justice work to advocate for and with underserved populations and vulnerable communities. So in the personal essay, one of the things that we're looking for is a demonstrated commitment to that, in addition to, speaking to what you'd like to do with your social work career. And then in the analytical essay, we ask you to, talk about a social problem and how might you work to address that social problem. And what we're really looking for there is critical thinking, ability to kind of think at a systems level about issues needing change. So volunteer experience, prior work experience are great things to speak to in your application, especially if they're in, kind of what Jennifer was speaking about, these sort of helping professional settings. Those are great things to have in your resume as well.
Yeah, like everyone said, I don't know what else I could probably add, but yeah, getting some experience is obviously definitely helpful. I now see a more group of students actually coming into our program who have a lot of variety of diverse experience with the population in their community already. So I think the quality of the discussion in class is getting even better, so I would be we definitely look for more applicants like who can kind of bring more diverse perspective as well. And again, this program is also 60 credits, which it takes up to 2 years. So it's pretty intense. Like each semester, students have to take up to like a 15 credits, and then you'll have like a part-time practicums for 2 semesters, and then the last semester will be full-time internship. So you will still have a lot of practical and internship experience during the training, but also like having a more diverse experience with the diverse group of the population would be definitely helpful. This program will definitely help students kind of really build more strong academic in their counseling techniques or rehabilitation system and service delivery. But we are more particularly focusing on the group of the individuals who are from the transition age youth to working age adults. So sometimes we get students coming into our program and telling us that, oh, I would love to work with the children, which is not really focused on the age population in our program. So I would encourage students get really familiar with what our focuses are. Also, I think each program has the handbook for each master's program as well as the doctoral program. I know each handbook is pretty lengthy, so it might not be fun to read all of them, but I would strongly recommend you to kind of look through them carefully before you apply for the program, to kind of like making sure that you are a really good fit with this program.
Absolutely. Taylor has a question about major and requirements for applying to different programs. So can any of you speak to the different majors that you see apply to your programs? And with clinical psychology or PsyD, having that baseline is important. But
I think Angela and I just put something in the chat about how it's not a barrier for our program for social work or for counseling, that we appreciate diverse backgrounds. There may be some you need to take, but it's not a barrier.
Yeah, and I would say our program here, we've had students come in with very different undergrad majors. Like we had a computer science major, we had a biology major. Most of our students do come in with psych majors, but not all of them. And I think that, you know, for the most part, it works out well. You might have to read an undergraduate developmental psychology textbook or something to kind of get caught up on things that maybe you missed by doing a different major, but it doesn't mean you can't attend the program.
Yeah, same here in the counseling program as well. We have a group of students mostly from the Rehab Psychology undergraduate program from UW Madison, but we still have the students who have a background in computer science as well. Or even like one of our faculty member actually has a computer science in his undergraduate program. So yeah, I think we are all welcome to anyone who have like a passion and, you know, working with diverse individual groups in this field.
Let's see. Going back to the question, how do you balance your own mental health while counseling others? How do you separate work from home? Good question. Who would like to tackle this one?
Well, and then there was kind of a piggyback question to that about, you know, can people who might have had their own mental health struggles go into this work? Is it feasible? So I have thoughts about both, but I feel like how do you care for yourself as you do this work is sort of a whole class, right? And is something that we talk about in a really ongoing way as our students are in their field placements doing this work. The easy short answer is a whole lot of self-care and good supervision and consultation, but there's a lot to unpack there that we wouldn't have time for. But to Grace's question about can people with their own mental health difficulties go into this work, you know, I think when we think about the rates of mental health conditions in the general population, we can know without a doubt that there are plenty of people doing mental health work with their own mental health difficulties. You know, there's been some studies that look at MSW students specifically and things like exposure to adverse events, childhood experiences, or trauma. And, you know, over 50% of one study found that over 50% of students seeking an MSW had experienced at least one or more traumatic events in their lifetime. So, you know, when we think about the prevalence, and especially from a trauma-informed care lens, but also I think a stigma-busting mental health lens, absolutely, you can do this work with you know, lived experience with a mental health condition because it is so widespread. There's important things to consider and a lot of work that you need to do, you know, in your own sort of preparation and development to be able to do this work well, you know, depending on what you're impacted by or what's affected you. But it's certainly feasible.
All right. What advice would you give undergraduate students who are majoring in fields that focus on mental health that you wish you would have known?
That is a great question. Really good question. I think that you're in a really important field right now. Right. I mean, this is what we need more now than ever. We need individuals who can normalize mental health as another form of health. So I would say you're in the right place, just given where we are in the world. And I think I would also, the advice I think I wish I would have gotten was knowing about the many different paths and the many different types of work that you can do. I think we tend to view this a little bit narrowly, and there are a lot of different ways in which you can engage in this work, whether it's on the individual level to the systems level. So I would encourage you to do informational interviews and to do some shadows and to talk with about the types of work that they get to do so that you can start to find the best match for yourself.
So let's see, a common question that comes up a lot is, I want to get a master's, I want to be a counselor, I want to be a therapist. I don't know, like, if I should do social work, I don't know if I should do a counseling specific one, the licensure and all of those moving pieces. And there's usually a question like this that comes up in this panel, and just trying to understand all these different options. So thinking about your programs and how a student might choose one over the other. What would your advice be in figuring that out? It's a long question. Why would I choose an MSW over master's in counseling through program Jennifer works with?
Well, I guess if that's the question, I have to respond to that one.
What do I do?
Well, so this question comes up a lot, and what I hear students kind of thinking about among the different disciplines most often, what I hear them comparing is a master's in counseling to become an LPC, master's in marriage and family therapy to become an LMFT, or a master's in social work to become an LCSW. And all three of those programs, if you do them full time, can take around 2 years. I know Jennifer you said your program is a 3-year program. All of them require, at least in Wisconsin, 3,000 of post-graduate education supervised clinical hours. So yeah, this question comes up a lot of how do I decide? So I'll speak to social work. If you are considering, if you are someone who you really just want to do psychotherapy, you want to work in a mental health clinic or eventually one day open your own private practice, social work might not be the field for you, because while our education does prepare you to do that, we also place so much emphasis on advocacy, on systems level work, on understanding policies and services, and how to implement change beyond the individual level, at the meso and macro level as well. And so sometimes we have students who come into our MSW program because they purely want to do psychotherapy, and they get into our classes that are thinking about those other things, and they say, well, I'm not learning how to do therapy. I don't like this. Where are my classes about how to do therapy? So, we have those, and those tend to come in the advanced year. But when I meet with students trying to make this decision, I'm really listening for, do you want to do mental health work, but are you also kind of this like social justice, bigger picture leaning person? And when I hear that, I think an MSW might be the right track. But if I hear, no, I really just want to do therapy, then my recommendation is look at our curriculum, look at the courses. You can look at our syllabi, see what the classes that you would be taking, and see how excited you feel about taking those classes. And that might help you decide.
And I'll jump in from the counselor side. I think, Angela, the way that you answered it is, I think it's like where you want to start, right? Because you can end up in the same place. And I do think social work has more of a focus on the system's bigger picture, whereas counseling, we start at the individual and then move up and out. And so I think the advice to look through the courses and to really think about where your passion is. Do you want to work with individuals? Do you want to work with groups? And do you want to create change starting there? then you would want to get your clinical mental health, your master's in clinical mental health. And the one thing I would add about counseling is that really our framework really comes from a place of wellness. If we could not utilize the DSM, we wouldn't, because the frame really is one of wellness and really examining where people are developmentally to explain some of the problems and issues that they might be having. So just learning more about fields could also be helpful in terms of really thinking about where you best fit.
Very good advice. Do any of you have experience getting licensed in one state and then moving to another state and having to be relicensed? Does this make the field not super flexible as far as moving goes? Anyone?
So I'm only licensed in the state of Wisconsin. However, this is something I have to keep track of because, most of my students, when they graduate, don't end up in Wisconsin. They end up in many, many other states. And yeah, I mean, it depends on the state. Like every state has their own rules about licensure, their own number of postdoc hours or, postgraduate training hours that are required. Some states make you cough up every single syllabus from every single grad class that you took. Others don't. They're like, oh, you graduated from an accredited program. Cool. Here's a license. So, it's just, yeah. So for psychologists, it varies tremendously. The two hardest states to get a license in are New York and California. So I don't plan on moving to either one of those places.
Right. How do you know that this is a job you would be good at? That is, what characteristics would you say are valuable in these counseling type jobs? What makes someone good at what you do?
Flexibility, openness to a variety of perspectives, willingness to learn more about yourself, creativity. I'm trying to think of some of the characteristics that the ability to work in groups and be able to understand different perspectives and points. That's what I would say.
Enjoy working with people with diverse backgrounds, and also who appreciate commonality, but also respect the differences. I think that's a big thing.
I would add to that comfort, or at least ability to tolerate emotion, other people's emotions and your own emotions. That's a huge, huge part of being a counselor and working with other people. So if you're somebody who likes to avoid strong feelings, this might not be the profession for you.
Agree. I second that. I would also add, what I hear the most from students about what led them to be interested in being a therapist specifically is people telling them, oh, you're such a good listener, or you give such good advice. So one, and then feeling sort of this intrinsic desire to help others and serve others. So those are great components to have in place, but I think that ability to tolerate strong emotions and to yourself remain centered in the midst of those is a skill that can be developed, but it's an important skill to have. And I think another one that sort of fits with that is a high capacity for critical self-reflection. Because in order to do this work well, you are constantly self-reflecting on your own thoughts, feelings, affective processes.
Angela, that's funny. I had one of my first year students came to me today and just was like, I had no idea I would have to think about myself this much. I'm getting so tired of myself. But it's how we do the work. And it goes back to Grace's question. So absolutely, if you have mental health issues, you can absolutely go into this field, but you shouldn't use your education to work through it, right? You may need to do some work on the side of, because you're going to be digging in, and that just can be hard. It can be hard.
Let's see. We've got some good responses already in here. I added our career community page that has information on licensing, so that should be helpful. What other questions come up as you think about preparing applications, being ready to choose programs? What would the average salary be for each profession represented here today? Good question, Kat. It's ballpark salary range. How about salary based on different types of organizations that a counselor might work in?
I don't even know if I can venture a guess. There's so much variability. There's so much variability that I don't even know if I can venture a guess. Although we have a link here. This looks great.
Yeah, I just put the vocational rehab counselor average of salary in Wisconsin. You kind of see that it really varies based on the years of experience you have.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what is the most difficult part of your job? What do you find challenging? How much more time do we have? What's a current challenge in your field?
I think access to mental health. I think insurance. I think if you talk to anyone who is working in a practice setting, they will talk about insurance and the barriers that individuals have to go through in order to access mental health services. I think for any of our folks who are working in a school as a school counselor right now, what we know about, we haven't learned very much through our pandemic, and schools are really stressful places to be, just with the competing mental health demands and then the academic demands. So those would be the two that are top of mind for me.
What are some entry-level jobs that you can think of in counseling field that could that one could get with a bachelor's in psychology, sociology, social work? That is the question.
So there are a variety of settings that, they might be residential settings or partial day programs or intensive outpatient programs that are mental health settings, but there's a whole team of providers, including bachelor levels providers who might be referred to as a behavioral health consultant or a mental health technician. So you're not practicing independently, you're not doing like assessment and diagnosis and psychotherapy, but you might be very much a part of the treatment team where you are working directly with consumers in that care center, whatever it might be, and getting a lot of exposure to a variety of mental health conditions. That can also be true for things like group homes, and other community mental health centers.
All right. How would you recommend starting the process of looking for graduate programs to apply to? We have a lot of resources on our career community page that I shared. What else comes to mind from our panelists on this one?
I would say, like once you go to the website of the program, obviously there's a kind of section about the application process, but also I would strongly encourage you to contact either like a program service coordinator. For example, like in our clinical career counseling program, we have a student service coordinator. She's the one who is kind of like managing all of the application process, as well as the curriculum and other activities for master's program. I would encourage you to contact her, or even, I would strongly encourage you to contact like any of the faculty members, just kind of getting to know them, asking for more suggestions, like what they're looking for, like what we had in this panel discussion, but also it's a really good opportunity for you to get to know more other faculty members in that field. And you will definitely have a lot more tips and ideas like from the conversation that you will have with the people.
Thinking about the interview process for applying to programs.
Because the interview is also part of our application process. So once you submit your applications, we're going to do the screening first, and then some of you will be invited for the individual interview. So before even doing the interview, I think it would be nice to kind of get connected with the people.
Are any of your programs doing virtual interviews right now, given the times that we are still in? Can anyone speak to how can students prepare for that?
Read through all the materials that you get. So look through everything that we send in advance. Be prepared to engage in both the group process and individual. So we have two different types of parts of the day, one where you will get an individual interview to share a little bit more about yourself, and then a time to interact with others. So really, bring yourself, do your research, read about the program. I think when individuals ask about how do they even start, you got to think about location, then you get to think about type, and then you get to really think about specific programs. So really honing in on what you think you want. I always encourage people to do shadows, interviews, talking to people right now, so that will help maybe narrow some of your choices. I don't know what others would say.